you cannot fail but notice, top story absolutely everywhere, the US has slapped tariffs on EU steel and aluminium.
Yeah.
Now, I remember this was floated as being something they might be doing, and everyone was frantically trying to talk them out of it. I watched a couple of YouTube videos about why it was important, steel and aluminium. Why would that matter? Well, thank God we've got Jonathan Davis, who's an economist and wealth advisor. Hello, Jonathan.
Hi, Rufus.
So, trade tariffs. We know that America under Trump is taking a far more kind of protectionist attitude towards, well, pretty much everything, let's be honest. America first. We've all heard Trump say that. Is this any great surprise that these tariffs now are being introduced in order to promote Americans buying American?
Well, President Trump delivers on his campaign promises. What a shocker. No, there's no surprise with this whatsoever. In March, he levied the tariffs on Chinese imports. He gave an extra couple of months to the EU, Canada, and Mexico. He then gave another month, and he said, right, enough's enough. We're going to do it, and indeed, they're doing it from midnight tonight. So, no, it's not a surprise.
Is he right to do it, though? Because he was, I know, against Europe, because there were tariffs that Europe were imposing on American goods.
Yeah, I mean, the big issue of the month of the year, surely, is the customs union, which is a massive metaphorical tax or tariff wall around the European Union. So anyone sending goods or services into the EU has to pay a lot of tax, which is for example, one of the reasons why we don't eat much food from the fantastic farms in Africa, because they can't export into the EU and be still competitive with French farmers. Tariffs are all, as you say, about protectionism. They're about protecting your own people, your own farmers or manufacturers or whomever. I'm a free market capitalist, and as a free marketer, I hate taxes full stop. I certainly hate tariffs. As far as I'm concerned, there should be no tariffs at all by any country, to anyone, from anyone. This is a bad move as far as I'm concerned. But the fact is, Donald Trump is a politician, and he was elected to do this. So this was his manifesto. So he's simply giving the American people what they elected him to do. And the fact is, he's got what they call midterm elections coming on for Congress later this year. So he's got to deliver. And that's what he's doing.
Now, I mean, look, I did economics at GCSE level, and it was the only GCSE that I passed it, but I got a D. I was absolutely terrible at it. So for anybody, and I would imagine I'm not necessarily...
Is a D a pass? Hold on, is a D a pass?
A D technically is a pass. Isn't it? Oh, maybe it's not. I think, isn't it, you get A, B, C, D, E, and it's basically only really counts as a pass if it's
true,
a C.
isn't it? Yeah, but you're right.
Or you get U or A
it's
or whatever.
True what you're saying, though.
Yeah, but it's nonsense.
It's really,
let's be honest, I was terrible at it, and I remain terrible at it. But what are the arguments? Because I think, frankly, if you're trying to promote people buying from the manufacturers in their own country, I mean, in this country, we know that, farmers are properly under the, got the old thumbscrews on with the way that supermarkets buy from them when it comes to milk and all of those things. Dairy farmers having an absolute nightmare. Yeah. So I think a lot of people would say, yeah, great, let's put up these tariffs, keep cheap foreign imports out, and that will be better for our economy. Does that argument not hold any water?
Well, it depends on your point of view. If you are one of these farmers or one of these steel manufacturers, then of course you don't want anyone taking your business. You want to be able to charge as high a price as possible because there's less competition. So when a country puts up a tariff barrier, it's saying, if you want to export into my country, you're going to have to charge an extra, in this case, 25% for steel, 10% for aluminium products. Thus, immediately, the manufacturers of steel and aluminium products in the United States have suddenly got a 25% and 10% cost advantage.
Yeah.
So they can therefore sell more to whoever their customers are going to be, such as the car manufacturers, for example.
Right.
The problem is, ultimately, who's going to pay for it? The consumers. We are going to pay for it.
Because of the tit for tat of other countries.
Charges, costs.
Yeah.
So it means they've got a market advantage in their own country, but that country is still the minority globally, and because of the tit for tat, it will cost them money on any kind of export. But is the feeling that they were already suffering from not being able to be competitive internationally? Is that America's argument?
Well, that is the argument, because there is generally an oversupply of these products on world markets. Well, wonderful. That means that there's too much being supplied, the prices have to come down, we, the consumers, benefit, and if it means that some businesses go bust, well, hello, welcome to the real world. That's what happens. Until we get into, and this is what you learned at age 16, until we get to supply-demand equilibrium. At the moment, we've got more supply than demand. That's why prices have been coming down. That's why American businesses have been finding it difficult in the steel business, and so on. And also the Chinese were subsidizing their products to get exported. Well, can I say, when the Chinese were doing so, we should thank them. We should thank the Chinese for subsidizing the American consumer. In effect, the Chinese are giving overseas aid to America.
Through the medium of drinks cans and car parts.
Exactly, all of that stuff. But, we're talking about here steel and aluminium. I think we should also, as I mentioned, we should also talk about food produce. For how many decades have we cried, I'm being perfectly serious here, when we've seen starving children in Africa? And one of the many, many reasons that they are in that position is because their economies cannot get going in the same way that we can, because, as I say, they cannot sell their agricultural produce into the EU because of massive tax barriers. And also, it therefore means we have to buy our food produce from the French, from the Spanish, and so on. Nothing wrong with that, except that we're paying for their Range Rovers and BMWs. In other words, it's not the most efficient way. It doesn't keep our cost of eating down. And this comment about the farmers are under the cosh of the grocery stores, well, 40% of the spending by the European Union is in giving to farmers. Farmers are doing okay.
So you
have done.
Are you
Well, you
against...
say that, but I know a few farmers, and they are telling everyone the exact opposite.
Yeah.
Dairy farmers are, on their backsides.
Yeah. Well, all I can say is farmers always have. Have you ever asked a farmer about the weather?
They do moan, yeah.
Terrible. Farmers are doing okay. They always have done.
But should there be? So you're basically a pro-Brexit person, I would have thought, and you're against any customs union, so we can buy off Africa and countries in Africa.
Well, for example, or New Zealand, or Australia.
Yeah.
Absolutely. In other words, whoever can manufacture or produce a good or service the most efficiently, so that we, the consumer, get it the most cheaply, and therefore raise our standards of living, that's what should happen. This idea that we should hand money to this company or that sector, ultimately all it does, it helps a minority of the population, but we all have to pay for it. That doesn't hold water for me.
Well, it's largely the kind of widely held view in a capitalist society, but I know it's one that's not without its detractors. However, Jonathan, thank you very, very much indeed for speaking to us and explaining some of that to us. Very grateful indeed.